Hey, this is Andy here with Libertarian Revolution, and today I'm getting kind of international. I'm coming to you from New Orleans, Louisiana at the Libertarian Party National Convention for the United States of America, but I'm joined today by the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. What is your title in the Libertarian Party of Canada?
It is actually leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. Yeah, that's the official title.
Oh, really?
Okay. That is actually by law the head or the public face of the parties in Canada is called the leader. And then the person who does what would be equivalent to the U.S. chair job is called the president. So there's a president who looks after the day-to-day operations and organization of the party. Then there's the leader who is essentially like the Gary Johnson of the party, the candidate that runs for office, that it becomes prime minister.
Oh, so the leader of the party is actually like the equivalent to the presidential candidate, or
exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
But we maintain our responsibilities in between election cycles. So we don't have a primary cycle like you do here. We don't have primaries. So at convention, we get elected, and then we serve our term, and we are the public face of the party for the whole term. And in the general election, we run for office.
And now, what was the other title you said that somebody has?
The president.
The president. And is that a paid position or a volunteer position?
Well, they're mostly volunteer for now, so we're trying to get our fundraising level up to the point where we can employ people full-time, but we're not quite there yet, so we're all still making sacrifices and volunteering to get the message out.
Now, when did you run for Prime Minister?
2015.
Okay. And how often do they elect a Prime Minister in Canada?
It's every 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I recall, and Jeff Berwick, didn't he have like a short-lived run for Prime Minister?
Well, he came on as a candidate for our party, so he was running as a candidate under me, and he came up for a while, did some preliminary work, and when it got close to doing it, we realized he would have to declare permanent or residency in Canada, and that would have some serious tax implications.
Oh, yeah.
For Berwick. So he's like, sorry, can't do it. But we got some fun, had some fun, got some play out of it. So it was fun while it lasted.
So how big is the Libertarian Party of Canada?
You know,
how many dues-paying members?
Oh man, I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say it's around 10,000.
Okay.
So.
You know, that's actually not that much smaller than the number of dues-paying members the Libertarian Party of the USA has. Now,
is that right? Oh.
Yeah, now during the peak in terms of dues-paying membership of the Libertarian Party USA was around 2000 to 2001, and we got up to around 33,000 dues-paying members. Now, unfortunately, that's gone down, and it's gone up and down over the years since then, but we haven't really recovered from that.
Yeah.
In 2016, it went up to like 20,000. Then in 2017, it went down to 14,000 and something. Now I think it's hovering in the 14 or 15,000 and something range. But sounds like the LP of Canada might be doing a little bit better than I thought you all were doing.
You know, I pulled that number out of my
Throwing
butt.
my fake Canadian accent.
No do to boot it. No do to boot it. No do to boot it, bud. You know, I pulled that number out of my arse. So I don't know what it is. That was just like an educated guy. It could be half that or a quarter of that. But I would guess that it's proportionate to the U.S. party in terms of our population. So I think we're about 10 times smaller than the United States in terms of our population. So I would guess that our party is about 10 times smaller because we get about the same percentage of votes in Canada as you do here in the States.
Now, do you have voter registration in Canada? And if so, can you register by political party?
We don't have a voter registration, no. We just, there is a registry of who voted for what party. Like, I think you can look up that, I think. Well, no, actually, sorry. You can look up political donations, so you can tell, you know, who's donated to what party, but there's no registry.
Oh, okay. Well, here in the USA, most states, with the exception of North Dakota, actually, which is next to Canada, they have voter registration. When you fill out a voter registration form, and you have to be registered so many days before an election in order to vote. And I think in like something like 25 or 26 states, you can register by political party, and you check a political party, or you can check other and write in a political party. So Apparently, last I heard, the Libertarian Party USA has over 500,000 registered voters. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're all voting Libertarian consistently, and they're not all certainly sending donations to the party. I wish they were.
Right.
But they check the Libertarian box on their voter registration form in the 25 or 26 states where you can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I understand there was a controversy involving Lauren Southern with the whole slut walk. She showed up and protesting the slut walk.
Yes, and
can you talk about that just really briefly, what happened?
Yeah, so Lauren was a new candidate for us, and I didn't know that much about it. We started getting messages that she was from some SJWs, I guess, that were very upset or triggered by this gal, Lauren Southern. So I looked at the stuff she was doing. I didn't really understand what it had to do with liberty, but I'm like, okay, whatever. These people are kind of nuts. Their emails, this is before anyone knew what an SJW was, or at least before I knew what it was. I just recognized them as kind of crazy people. But she was pissing off a lot of people, and I was getting messages from our party executive that she wasn't cooperating with us, that she was being a bit of an asshole to them, I take those kinds of things seriously. And because part of the problem in Canada, and I don't like this, but as leader, I am legally required to sign off on all the candidates, and so I have to personally endorse candidates. And so if there's a candidate that I don't feel like personally endorsing, that means they don't get on the ballot. So that's an issue. So I was like, okay, well, I am withdrawing my endorsement of Lauren until we can have a talk, because it sounds like she's attacking my executive. And then, of course, everything hit the fan. I think she went to Breitbart immediately, and then Breitbart wrote a hit piece on us, portraying us as infiltrated by SJWs, and the leader was basically feckless and being puppeteered by these left-wing Illuminati types that infiltrated our party. So all hell kind of broke loose, and it was tough to, I was pissed at Lauren that she went to Breitbart. I think she was pissed at me that I suspended her. Eventually we did get together and talk. Someone made peace with us, and so I sat down with Lauren. I heard her side of the story, and I heard that I got some of the facts. Some of the facts that were given to me weren't entirely a correct portrayal of reality.
Oh, now had you seen the videos before any of this happened? Because I saw the videos, and I don't think she did anything that merited being delisted as a candidate.
No.
So had you seen the videos though before?
I saw the videos, and I agree. I didn't like them. I didn't think they had anything to do with liberty. I didn't understand why she was triggering college kids. I mean, to me, it was kind of like going to the Special Olympics and telling Special Olympians that they're dumb or something. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what the Special Olympics are for. I didn't get the purpose of it. It wasn't. My goal was to persuade people to be libertarians, and so I didn't get what she was doing, and what it even had to do with liberty. But I didn't care. Like, she could do that. I didn't have to like that. I wasn't gonna. But it was the story I got that she was being an asshole to our executive, that she didn't want to play. She wasn't a team player. That she didn't want to be a team player. That she just wanted to do her own thing without any thought to our party brand or even having a conversation with us. So that bugs me. I'm a firefighter. And
are you still a firefighter, by the way?
I still am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, you don't have to toe the party line with us, but I want you to have a conversation with us. I need to know that you're on my team, or, why would I endorse you? Like, why would I sign off on you? I'm not going to give you all the resources and work my ass off for you if there's nothing.
No, she was running for a federal office?
Yes.
Okay, was that like the equivalent to U.S. House of Representatives?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Or like, yeah, okay. Well, so had she been running for
Congress, maybe, I guess?
Yeah, that Congress. Yeah, there's U.S. House and there's U.S. Senate. Yeah. So, anyway, now if she had been running for, let's say, a city or county or state or a province office, would that have affected? Would that have required your input?
No.
Or would that have been a province or local issue?
There's no affiliation between the federal parties and the provincial parties.
Okay.
So she could have just followed BC elections law and.
So that would have been an issue for the Libertarian Party of British Columbia.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the end of the story is, I found out the truth and realized that You know, there might have been some people with an agenda trying to get her out of the party. So I brought her back. So I made two mistakes. First, I suspended her without checking the facts, getting the real story. And we had a bunch of people leave the party because of that. And then I brought her back, and a bunch of people left the party after that. So
yeah, I mean, just my personal opinion would be if she was dismissed for an illegitimate reason, then I don't think bringing her back was bad.
Yeah, well,
but
I had I think legitimate cause to keep her out of the party.
Yeah.
You know, all she had to do was have a conversation with me, but she went to Breitbart and there was a hit piece on us, right? So, you know, if you're going to play that way, but, you know, she apologized to me and she said, you know, she explained it wasn't her intention or that. Yeah, so I said, you know what, we'll move forward, that's it, water under the bridge. And so,
do you think that there's is there infighting in the Libertarian Party of Canada like there is in the U.S.? And unfortunately, you know, I've been a Libertarian for a long time, and I really hate the whole left versus right thing.
Yeah.
And I don't even like to think of myself as being on the left. I think or the right. I think that Libertarian should be totally separate, like outside of the whole left-right political discussion. But unfortunately, it seems like the Libertarian Party movement often devolves into arguing between left libertarians and right libertarians, and some of that went on this weekend at this convention. And so do you have the same thing happening in Canada?
I haven't really noticed it, no. I mean, I think most libertarians in Canada come from kind of the conservative tradition or the right, more so, but there's certainly people from the left too, I guess, but we don't have libertarian socialists in our party. We don't have communists in our party.
We didn't really until recently either.
Yeah, so I don't know what to make of that. I don't know.
That's a recent development, you know, or at least being this public like they were at this convention here. That I've been to a bunch of Libertarian Party conventions and I've never seen anything like that before. That's relatively
that's
a new thing.
Bit of a troubling sign for me. I guess I'm a little worried about what that happening in Canada. I mean, I don't think Canadians would, or our party members would tolerate it, but something we have to keep our eye on. You know, if you think rent is theft, then that means you advocate use of violence. If I rent my place out, you know, you can use violence to stop theft. So, whatever is theft. So, I think that I don't see how it's compatible personally, but you know, it's good to have conversations, and it's, you know, I'm hoping that these folks that are coming to the party with these left-leaning ideologies can leave them at the door and subscribe to libertarian philosophy, not just parts of it that they like. But
I agree.
The idea that we have property rights, the non-aggression principle, you know, a cogent theory of property rights that allows you to rent things because they're yours. That seems to me like day one stuff when you join a party. But hopefully you can move these people. But getting someone that is standing on a stage wanting to lead the party, man, that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, it was very weird, and I don't think that guy ever stood a chance of getting elected. But this is not. I don't know if this is your first Libertarian Party of the USA National Convention or not. Have you been to any other?
2016.
Okay, well, I guess there was some different weirdness that happened at that one.
Right.
But anyway, how long have you been a Libertarian? Like, how did you get involved?
Ooh, man, I have been a Libertarian for probably since 2004 or so.
How did you find out about it?
You know, I was going through a period in my life where I realized that the religion of my childhood was based on a bunch of stories that I've been told, and that I realized that had I grown up in another part of the world, I'd have a completely different view of reality, different religion, different worldview. And so that was very unsettling for me, because I always thought that I had arrived at my religion through rationality, but it wasn't. It was just because my family had it, my community had it, and I was essentially indoctrinated with it. So when that was an unsettling time when I realized that my belief system wasn't put there by myself, but it was put there by someone else. I wondered what other things I believed that might not be true, and that led me down the rabbit hole. And I discovered, you know, Ayn Rand, for example, and noticed, got introduced to objectivism, and I started watching films. There was a film by Aaron Russo called Freedom to Fascism.
America for Freedom and Fascism,
Yeah, and that got me thinking about like all of a sudden all these things started popping up to me. I'm like, man, I've had the wool pulled over my eyes for so long. So I guess I got red pilled back in 2004, you could say. And then, within 6 months, I was an anarchist, anarcho-capitalist. I found Free Domain Radio and Stefan Molyneux, and swore I'd never get involved in politics. And, I railed against and put down people who did get involved in politics as a typical ANCAP kind of rebel, right? And so it took some time to get me out of that. It wasn't until 2014 or so when I was essentially headhunted, and Libertarian Party kept encouraging me to run for them, and they kept trying to convince me. It took them 6 months or so to try to convince me. They kept bringing up Ron Paul and saying, well, you can't tell me that Ron Paul didn't make a difference. He's a
Did you hear much about Ron Paul up in Canada?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we followed all that. We consume all our media from the U.S. So.
I'm just guessing that Canadians probably know more about the U.S. than people in the U.S. know about Canada.
I think that's a safe bet, yeah. The media is one direction, not the other.
Yeah.
You don't consume a lot of Anne of Green Gables, or maybe you have the Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, I've seen the Trailer Park Boys. You have
that at least, but a little bit of
I've seen it on YouTube, though.
Yeah. So I finally agreed to run for Parliament in a year and a half, and 2 days after I made that commitment, my member of Parliament resigned. I was thrown into by-election, and I found myself on the political stage, and we started throwing out these memes. That meme, I want gay married couples to protect their marijuana plants with guns, went around the world, got me on Fox News, CNN, CBC, and so I found myself 2 months after making this commitment, all of a sudden being nominated for leader of the party.
And what year was that?
In 2014.
Okay, wow.
And so suddenly I went from writing an article like literally 6 months before that explaining how voting and political action is immoral to running for prime minister, and it was a weird kind of evolution for me.
Yeah, no, interesting. You brought up Stefan Molyneux, and I wanted to talk about him, and I wanted to get back to Lauren Southern for a moment. Now, I believe Lauren has become inactive in the Libertarian Party of Canada, like she's no longer involved or no longer a member.
Yeah, and in fact, she throws mud at us fairly regularly.
Yeah, I saw she put out a video. She put out a couple videos where she was kind of criticizing libertarians, and I agree with some of the criticisms she brought up. Some of them, some of them I did, and some of them I did. Now, one big issue I know Lauren talks about a lot, and does Stefan Molyneux, and is one of the most controversial issues in the Libertarian Party and movement, and that is immigration and the proper application of immigration in a libertarian society and in our present society. Now, I don't know if I'm in a minority or not, but I actually agree with Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux and Lou Rockwell and Hans Hermann Hoppe and the late Murray Rothbard, actually, if you ever read Nations by Consent. I think that if we had a private property anarcho-capitalist society, that immigration would be regulated by private property owners, and there would be there'd be no welfare state and no mass democracy unless it was a voluntary organization having an election and the results only applied to the people who consented to it. And there'd be no forced association. But that's not the world that we live in, and I think the situation is similar in Canada as it is in the U.S., where we basically live in a democratic welfare state with forced association laws and lots of public property. So I just think that if you said, hey, we're just going to rip the borders open and allow unlimited numbers of people to come in, that it actually would be damaging to liberty. Now, that's a controversial issue. There was a lot of argument about it leading up to this convention here in New Orleans and at the convention here in New Orleans. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Where are your thoughts on where the stance is taken by fellow Canadians, Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux, and just other libertarians? And where do you? What is your take on this issue?
Yeah, well, I agree with them that migration is a problem, and it's a problem because we have big government, right? And so it used to be that when we had small government, something like 30% of the people that would immigrate here would turn around and go home after a while because they couldn't make it. But now you can stay and collect entitlements and suck up the taxpayer and vote left and vote for bigger government and all that kinds of thing. So, but that is, the real problem here is the big government. and it didn't get that. The government didn't grow from immigration. It wasn't migrants that caused the government to grow. It was our own bloody citizens that
it was
caused
already
that.
growing.
Yeah,
and then the migration problem happened
there's
as a
new
result.
communist born every day to normal Canadian and American women that is going to go through public education, K to 12, with getting indoctrinated with this stuff, and then go to college. So I don't see any solution. Like closing the borders, focusing on borders to me is a red herring. So let's say we focus on borders and put all our attention on borders. What is that going to do? Like we're advocating for border socialism essentially. So I hate both open and closed borders people because I think they both kind of represent government programs. In the last election, my policy was to try to get government out of borders by advocating a policy that said Canadian citizens can invite whoever they want, as many people as they want, provided they're on the hook financially for their sponsorship. There's no entitlements to these people, and provided they're willing to take on some liability for any criminal action that these people do when they come here. So in other words, there's an incentive to very closely vet these people, and I think citizens that have skin in the game would do a much better job than the government. So I wanted to remove the power of borders from government, or immigration from government, as much as possible. I think that policy isn't perfect, but at least it got in the right direction. So but I prefer to focus on all these government programs that put us at risk. I mean, we could close the borders tomorrow and our country is still going to go to hell in a handbasket. The government isn't going to slow down. It's not like I said, there's a new communist born every day because we have public schools and we have universities that are publicly funded, and we have all these social programs, and everyone wants free stuff. They want to maximize. This is game theory 101. So until we have people ready to sacrifice, to sacrifice their comfort in the here and now for a better tomorrow for their kids, I don't see how we turn this around. I think that borders are like a side issue, almost distracting us from attacking the real problem. I mean, the problem is the state is taking half our frickin' income. So if you're focused on a Mexican who's trying to come across the border and sell ganipganops in the Walmart parking lot, meanwhile someone is armed robbing you for 50% of your income, I think you might have your priorities backwards. But I do take and concede the point that migration is a problem, and that's why I came out with the policy that put migration in the hands of the individuals rather than government.
Yeah, I read something that apparently what you described is something like how it operates in Switzerland. And, Switzerland is not being overrun by, destructive migrants like some other countries in Europe. In fact, some people have accused me because I've made some critical comments about, modern day immigration. And they said, oh, you want to build a big police state. Well, actually, I don't want to build a big police state. And I've pointed out examples of how Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg, all of which are in Europe, rate very high on the Freedom Index, and they're not being overrun by lots of destructive migrants, whereas the United Kingdom, France, the Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, Belgium, and some other countries in Europe are.
Right.
And the difference is that they're not inviting them, number one. Number two, they're not enticing them with government welfare.
Right.
And number three, they have a difficult citizenship process. And so I do think that there are problems as far as how do you operate in the here and now.
Yep.
And if you're a large number of people are coming into the country who disproportionately in supermajority numbers, as is documented, are voting for bigger government and more gun control laws and welfare. So that's a problem.
And so the question is, how is it that they can vote for bigger government?
Because the Department of Immigration and Naturalization is swearing these people in.
Why does anybody's vote for bigger government matter? That is
You're right.
the problem
that's
there.
True.
So the fact that you
they
can
shouldn't
vote
be able
for
to vote for bigger government,
son, that is the problem there.
Yeah.
And that needs to be addressed. And until you address that, we're just like if you think that government is going to solve the migrant problem, like what we need is a strong daddy up there to build a wall, to close down the borders. You're conceding all the power to the government, and you think that's not going to blow back on you? You think that giving the government all the power over migration isn't going to result in a bigger government?
Oh yeah, well my take is to stop enticing them with welfare and easy citizenship.
Sure.
Make the citizenship process more difficult. Now, I'm not an expert on Canadian law or anything, but we have a U.S. Constitution that only authorizes a very small government. So, do you have any? I mean, what is, as a Canadian, your opinion of the U.S. Constitution, and do you have anything similar? I'm not an expert on Canadian law or anything, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the best documents ever written to try to restrain government. It's probably not perfect, or government would be restrained, obviously, so clearly a piece of paper isn't enough to restrain government. I think the thing that restrains government is a culture that says liberty or die and believes that to their core, because government follows culture. And so until we get that culture, the Constitution might as well be a piece of toilet paper. But it has slowed the growth of government, at least.
But do you have something like the U.S. Constitution in Canada?
We have a Constitution in Canada. It's not as strong as the U.S. Constitution, and it has things embedded in it like the equalization payments, for example. So have-not provinces get wealth transfers from the federal government, and so that comes out of the income tax. So it ends up being basically places like Alberta pay a lot of income tax, and that money doesn't come back to Alberta. It goes to places like Quebec and other provinces that run big socialist programs in them. So that's a pretty weak spot. And then we have the Charter of Rights, which was implemented in '82. I think Trudeau Sr. brought it in, and it's missing some key pieces like property rights. So property rights aren't in our charter. But we do have those documents.
Do you have a right to keep and bear arms in your version? Oh, geez.
No, we don't have that either.
Now, I know there are some gun rights in Canada. Just kind of a brief synopsis. Can you say what they are? I'm sure it's complicated, but just, brief synopsis. And how does it compare to gun rights in the U.S.?
All right. So in Canada, you can get a license. It's about a one-day course to get your basic license in order to purchase a long gun. To take another course to get your restricted license, which lets you buy semi-automatic guns and pistols. But then you need, under the Liberals' new legislation, you now need authorization from your local firearm. What's it called now? It's basically a position in the RCMP in the federal police. One of the local commissioners basically has to issue you an authorization of transport. So if you want to go to the gunsmith, go to the range, go to the border, go anywhere with your gun, you have to get permission in writing from one of these things. So it's pretty draconian that way, but there's certainly no open carry or concealed carry or anything like that.
Does it change from province to province in Canada?
No, it's pretty much the same.
Because here in the U.S., there are some states that have stronger gun rights than others.
Right.
So I don't know how much traveling you've done in the U.S., but there are some states where it's not as uncommon to see somebody open carrying, and then there's other states where you almost never see anybody open carrying unless it's a cop, and people freak out about it. But anyway, what about free speech in Canada? How good is that? And I've heard some talk about free speech being under attack in Canada recently, as it's under attack in this country as well. But how does free speech in Canada compare to free speech in the U.S.?
It sucks.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we have these things called human rights tribunals. They're set up at the provincial level. Every province, I think, has one. And they are kangaroo court. They don't use normal evidentiary procedures and court procedures. And you can lodge a complaint against anyone. So we had a lesbian lodged a complaint against a Muslim barber who didn't want to cut her hair because it was against his religion. We had a journalist republish the cartoons of the Danish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. And the imam took the Human Rights Tribunal. He spent $250,000 defending himself from this attack. We've had comedians fined for making fun of, for dealing with hecklers and making a joke about a disabled kid. And now we have a Bill C-16, which instantiates in law, and this is the thing that got Jordan Peterson on the map. To make a long story short, it essentially compels speech. It compels you to use gender pronouns in a sense. Or,
that's a law?
Yes.
Wow.
It's not in the criminal code, but it's in the Charter of Rights basically now. And so someone can take you to one of these human rights tribunals and say he's not respecting my gender pronouns, and you can get severe sanctions from that. So that, and now we have a motion in Parliament to form a committee to address Islamophobia and come up with solutions to Islamophobia. So that, of course, is going to have something to do with speech. what else could it be, right? Because that's what Islamophobia is. It's speech that liberals don't like about Islamists. So we're not doing so hot in Canada.
Are there any areas of Canada where Canada is more free than the USA? I think I might have just thought of one, and
Okay,
this is one that, and this is one that's probably benefiting Jeff Berwick right now. I'm pretty sure that Canada doesn't go after Canadian citizens for income tax if they're living outside the country for the year or something, or is that correct?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, in the U.S. here, they will go after an American citizen living in another country who's making money. Now, I think it's only if you make over a certain amount, like $90,000 a year or something like that. But taxing somebody when they're not even in the country all year seems pretty messed up to me.
It does, yeah.
So I think Canada doesn't do that. But have you thought of anything else?
I can't think of anything. I know that there is a survey or a study out there that ranks countries in terms of their economic freedom or something like that, and Canada actually comes out quite a bit higher than the States, and I don't know how or why that is.
Yeah, and I don't know how they weight those quite. You have to look into those surveys.
We pay
and
higher
see,
taxes. They're implementing carbon tax nationwide pretty soon, and I mean, our tax freedom day is around June 6th or 7th, right? So if we pay all our taxes up front for the year, we would be working till June 6th to pay all our taxes, and then we'd get to keep the rest for the rest of the year.
Now, what about military imperialism? Now, obviously, the USA is a much larger country, has a lot more money, and has a much larger military.
Right.
But does the Canadian military engage in any foreign interventionism like the U.S. military does?
Yeah, we're sending peacekeepers into Malawi right now. I don't even know where this country is. I don't even know where.
I think it's in Africa.
I don't even know where Aleppo is, by the way.
Like Gary Johnson, it's in Syria.
I don't know where any country but Canada is. That's all I care about. So we do these peacekeeping missions all the time and and do the dirty work of the UN, I guess, in these places. But we also get involved in, we've been involved in Afghanistan. We were involved with the bombing of Libya. We sent our Air Force over there and bombed the crap out of Libya. So now ISIS is raiding there. Thanks, good job. So we are kind of along for the ride with the U.S.
So they're just kind of going around supplementing what the U.S. is doing.
We do, yeah. I mean, I think this comes back to pressure being put on Canada for being in NATO, right? And so, I mean, if I were Prime Minister, I'd put pressure the other way. I'd say, look, I'm leaving NATO unless you guys cut down your military. It's like, you know how you have a friend who's your buddy, you go to the bar with all the time, but he's the kind of guy that always picks fights and always gets into fights and always drags you in, and you're like,
that's the U.S.
Here we go. So I kind of feel like the U.S. is that friend, right? Like you back them up, you go into the fight with them, and you do it. But at a certain point, you have to sit them down and have a talk and say, look, we can't continue being friends if you're going to keep picking these fights and getting me into trouble and making life dangerous for me. So I think it's time we have that talk with the U.S. and have them quit free riding on Canadian politeness and diplomacy. I mean, we shouldn't be getting involved in these wars. We need to be. We're peacemakers, and we trade. We're Canadians. The only time we get into conflicts is on the hockey ice. Feed them a few, and then say, "Oh, sorry about that, man. Let's go have a bud." But
how about what was I going to say? War on drugs. Now, I remember hearing several years back that was marijuana legal in British Columbia, or sort of de facto legal or something, and I remember hearing several years ago that the Canada was talking about legalizing marijuana, and the U.S. government had pressured them into not doing it. And I'd also heard about some American kind of refugees who were fleeing because of drug war activism, like a libertarian from California named Steve Cubby. He went up and lived in Canada for a few years, as did some other activists that I recall hearing about. But what is the state of the war on drugs in Canada? And how does it compare to the U.S.?
Well, we are on the verge of cannabis legalization nationwide. It comes in, I think, October 17th or something like that. It's unclear whether it'll be better or not. I mean, you now face a 14-year prison sentence if you pass a toke to someone and it turns out they're under 18. You face a 5-year prison sentence if you have more than 30 grams on you. You can't grow more than 4 plants in your house. If you do, another 5 years in prison. So there's all these draconian punishments coming in, jail time, and all these things that didn't exist before. For the past decade or so, Canada has been pretty good with cannabis, relatively. I mean, Vancouver had basically told its people that we're not going to enforce these laws, these federal laws. So have your dispensaries, grow your pot, do what you want.
Now, is it being done on a province-by-province basis? Like here in the U.S., it's kind of happened on a state-by-state basis. With a lot of it's been done through ballot initiatives, where people collect signatures on a petition and they put an issue on the ballot, and then the public gets to vote on it. And that's how the first medical marijuana bill passed in California back in 1994, and a bunch of other states did that as well over the next 20 years. And then once a bunch of states started passing it through the Citizens Ballot Initiative process, and not all states in the U.S. have a Citizens Ballot Initiative process, only about half of them have it. But anyway, there's a few state legislatures that have legalized medical marijuana. So anyway, is that how has it been working in Canada like that, on a province-by-province thing, or has it just been totally federal?
No, this is federal, so it's across Canada. It'll be legal to use recreational marijuana as long as you stay within the parameters. If you go outside that box, you're going to get hit hard with the stick and get thrown in a cage.
But is this something that just recently passed in Canada?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just recently passed. It's coming into force in October. So what happens is the federal government issues licenses to grow or produce for commercial license. And they're only going to probably hand out maybe 20 or 30 of these licenses. So those producers are going to have a license to print money. So you have Justin Trudeau's chief financial officer, who owns one of the biggest companies in Canada. He's going to get a license to grow. He's going to become a multi-millionaire for sure. And all these connected companies, and they're busting the kneecaps at small business. And then it's going to be up to each province to determine how it's going to be distributed. So Alberta will probably have it on the market. Ontario sells all their liquors provincially through provincial liquor stores. That's the only way you can sell it there. And they're going to sell cannabis through their government stores, and that's the only way people are going to...
Now, prior to this law passing at the national level, though, were there like laws passed in provinces or cities that were like decriminalizing marijuana or medical? No. Oh, okay.
No,
but you're saying so in
illegal.
Vancouver?
It was in the criminal code.
Oh, but in Vancouver, they just weren't enforcing it?
Yeah, exactly. The Vancouver mayor and council just said, listen, we're not going to enforce these laws. We don't agree with them. We're not going to devote policing to that. So keep it peaceful. Don't embark in a lot of crime, and we won't enforce these laws. So we saw an awesome market emerge in Vancouver. A lot of craft cannabis and mom and pop shops and medical dispensaries and all these. It was very cool to see, but that era is now coming swiftly to an end as we go to big corporate oligarchical.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other issue. But anyway, now one of my favorite issues is jury nullification, and that's where a jury has a right to judge not only the facts of the case, but the validity of a law itself. And if they think the law is they think it's a bad law, or that it's being applied in an unjust manner, they have a right to vote not guilty, even if the person's guilty. And that comes out of the English common law, and it was very common here in the U.S. up until sometime in the 1850s, when a lot of judges and prosecutors stopped telling the juries about it, part of which was because of some people refusing to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act. But and now today in America, very few people know about jury nullification, even though it's still perfectly legal, but the information about it has kind of been suppressed from the public. Now, Canada also comes out of the English common law tradition. So do you all have jury nullification up there, and what is the state of that?
I honestly have no idea.
Okay.
Never
Well, it must be really. Oh, really? Well, I hope I just informed you of something.
Yeah,
Maybe it'll help. I don't know. You should have it. All the countries that came out of England had jury nullification at one time. So New Zealand, Australia. I don't know about countries not influenced by England. But anyway, okay. Moving onward, I'd like to talk about Stefan Molyneux. Now, I'm a big fan of his videos. I've been following him on YouTube for a long time. I know he was a non-voting anarchist for a while. I don't even know if he votes now. I mean, I know he was encouraging Americans to vote, and I'm going to get into that in a few moments. But has he ever had any involvement with the Libertarian Party in Canada, or has he been a member or a guest speaker?
Not that I'm aware of. I know he has had some dealings with the Ontario Libertarian Party. They've had him to speak at some events, and he's done that. But yeah, I don't know.
Have you ever met him?
I've never met him. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. He's got a very popular YouTube channel, and anyway, now to get into the point of controversy, in this last election cycle, he was encouraging Americans to vote for Donald Trump. Now, I don't think he ever thought that Donald Trump was like the greatest thing since sliced bread or anything, but he was just looking at the political landscape, and like you've got this really, really horrible candidate named Hillary Clinton, and the main opposition is Gary Johnson, who was a very weak libertarian, and really not much of a libertarian. His running mate was even worse, Bill Weld. And there's really nobody else to vote for. And so I think Stefan Molyneux was like, he just thought Hillary Clinton was a lot worse than Donald Trump, and that if Americans elected Donald Trump, it would at least slow down the destruction of America and maybe slow down the destruction of Canada as well, since a lot of what happens in the U.S. affects Canada. But no, I didn't really agree with him. I can see why he did it. I never trusted Donald Trump myself. I didn't like Gary Johnson either, and even though I'm a member of the LP, I didn't even vote for Gary Johnson. I voted for our libertarian candidates running for lower level offices, but I didn't vote for the president. I didn't vote for Trump either. But anyway, and I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or I voted for another alternative party that had a very libertarian-leaning candidate called the Constitution Party, which is similar to the Libertarian Party, but it's more conservative. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Molyneux getting behind Donald Trump?
I don't know. I mean, I listen to all this stuff, and I still have a hard time kind of getting it. Because I remember him from blasting Ron Paul. I mean, how do you blast Ron Paul? Like, you're going to go from saying don't vote for Ron Paul to vote for Donald Trump. There was a bit of a disconnect there. I don't. And
that's a very good question. And if I ever got a chance to interview Stefan Molyneux, that's one of the questions I would ask him. Now, I think at the time he was like the non-voting anarchist guy.
Well, I think he still is largely, but for whatever reason, this election fired him up, and he. I don't know whether that was that he hated Hillary Clinton so much, or that he loved Donald Trump so much, or that he saw some emergency. Maybe he thought migration was an emergency. Maybe Ann Coulter's book really convinced him that there was this huge threatening crisis called migration, and I don't know, maybe it is a crisis. Beats me, man. These guys, I mean, Molyneux is probably smarter than I am, so maybe there's some legitimacy to that. I don't know. I just I have a hard time totally grasping it, and I have a hard time getting worked up about this issue when I'm getting taxed at 50%, and I can't smoke flavored tobacco, and I can't use an incandescent bulb, and who are these people that are stopping me from doing these things? Those are the people I give a damn about. Like, let me at those people, then I'll worry about the freaking,
Well, I mean, personally, I agree with Molyneux on that point. But I don't think that voting for Donald Trump was the solution. I mean, I'll vote for somebody who's a libertarian or a constitutionalist, which is somewhat of a libertarian. But there's difference between a libertarian and a constitutionalist in the U.S. But without getting into that, if I really believed that Donald Trump was a constitutionalist, I would have voted for him. I just never trusted the guy. And since he's been in office. I mean, any president, you could say maybe they've done a few good things. I mean, you could even say, find something that Obama or George Bush, Bush was a terrible president, Obama was a terrible president. But you could go through their record and find one or two things they did that were good. And I'm sure the same will be true with Donald Trump, but he's done some bad things too. He just signed a massive spending bill, the biggest spending bill in history, actually. And also, attacking Syria. And, so he's basically, at the end of the day, Donald Trump's just another big government guy and not a real solution. And, so I didn't agree with Molyneux for backing him. Now, what I'd like to do, because I think part of the issue gets into, do you believe in political action? Now, the fact that I'm involved in the Libertarian Party of the U.S. and you're involved in the Libertarian Party of Canada means that we both value using political action to affect change through, getting elected to office or just using it as a platform to speak from to inspire people and influence public policy. Right. Now there are some. You used to be a non-voting anarchist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did you see the debate between Larkin Rose and Adam Kokesh on that issue that happened right after Anarchapulco 2018?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it was hosted by Jeff Berwick on Anarchast.
Okay.
And you know Larkin Rose, yeah. Right? And I'm sure you know Adam Kokesh. He's here. Yeah. Well, Adam's running for president right now, or as he likes to call it, not president. But and Larkin Rose is an anarchist libertarian activist, and he's really against voting. He doesn't think people should take part in electoral politics, and so they had a debate. Anyway, I agree with Adam. I don't think there's a problem with engaging in electoral politics as long as you're pointing towards more liberty. I would say significantly more liberty. You don't have to necessarily be an anarchist, but at least a lot less government and a lot more freedom than we have now. And if you're doing that, I have no problem with anyone taking part in electoral politics. Now, if you're running somebody who's kind of a phony, like a Bill Weld type, then I would agree with Larkin Rose, because I think that's counterproductive. So I wonder if Stefan Molyneux now sees some value in political action, and maybe if he knew now what he knew back in 2008, 2012, maybe he would have supported Ron Paul. I don't know. I think Ron Paul's great too, by the way. I really like him. But anyway, before we wrap up here, how many elected libertarians do you have in Canada right now?
0.0.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have.
I don't know about that actually.
Oh.
So we don't have anyone elected. We only have libertarians at the provincial and federal level. So, Maxime Bernier is a conservative member of parliament who's a libertarian. He's like a Rand Paul type figure, and we're hoping to woo him over to the party, and he may flip soon. So that's going to be our goal.
But do you have any Libertarian Party members in Canada that are elected to a city office or something, or town office, or?
Municipal politics in Canada is nonpartisan, so.
Oh, well, it is officially in the U.S. as well, or at least not everywhere in the U.S., but in a lot of the U.S. they're officially nonpartisan. But we do have LP members who've been elected to local offices, including we have a guy here at this convention, Jeff Hewitt, who got elected mayor of some city in California that I believe has about 10,000 people in Riverside County.
Yeah.
And so that's a nonpartisan office, but he is an LP member. So do you have no way of have you all in your party not counted that, or you don't know if you have anybody?
I don't know if there's libertarian mayors out there. Honestly.
Oh, okay, or city councilmen or anything. Okay. All right. Well, I guess you got a website, Libertarian Party of Canada. Do you have your own website as well?
Libertarian.ca. I don't have my own website, which is pretty bad. I should probably get one, right?
Yeah.
It seems important.
So, and are you gonna run for?
Awesome. Donate money to it. I'm gonna have awesome stuff on there. You're gonna want to pay me for it.
Since you're still the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, when's the next Prime Minister election? And I'm assuming you'll be the candidate.
I would assume so. I mean, I'll find out at our next convention next weekend.
And when is? Oh, it's next week. How often do you have national conventions in
Every
LP?
3 years.
Okay, I'd love to go to one sometime. Yeah. When is your next convention?
July 5th to 7th.
Ooh, just thought of another important question before I go here. Do you have to petition to put candidates on the ballot in Canada? Collect petition signatures?
You have to get 100 signatures to get on the ballot.
Oh, it's only 100?
Yeah.
Okay, there's no higher requirement for any other higher offices or anything? What about, do you have a citizens initiative and referendum and recall process? Where you get signatures on a petition to put an issue on the ballot or to recall an elected official? Now, we don't have that in every state in this country, but we have it in a lot of states. Do you have something like that in Canada?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Some provinces may, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, and good luck to the Libertarian Party of Canada, and I hope you get elected Prime Minister. If you do, I might want to move to Canada someday.
Awesome.
So thanks a lot, and I'd love to go to one of your conventions at some point. All right, thanks, appreciate it.